I want to go now to Mary Frances Berry. She's a historian who joins us now. She's also a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So, this has been obviously a historic day, the third time the former president has been arraigned. Can you kind of put this into historical context for us? I mean, all day we've been commenting about how unprecedented this really is.
Well, it is unprecedented to have a president charged in this way, but there's a lot of history about it that's not unprecedented. In fact, the vice president of the United States in 1875 was there supposed to count votes, decided not to count them, which he's had the right to do because somebody presented him with separate slates of voters from electoral results from three of the states in the South. And so what we ended up doing is he didn't count them. He said, somebody has to sort out, which ones are the right ones. And once they did that, and it was some travail in doing it, a lot of people left Washington to go back to their states to help make sure they got the right votes, and they got two sets, and then there was a committee, and then finally Rutherford B. Hayes was named the president. I only point that out because also in 2000, when I was chair of the Civil Rights Commission, I had investigations of the Florida election. And poor Albert Gore Jr. from my home state of Tennessee, who was vice president, ended up having to be there to count the votes that year as vice president. And there were Democrats who ran over to the Capitol from the House. Some of them are still there, and some of them are my friends, political friends. And they asked him not to count the votes. And he had to decide whether he would not count them because they implicated fraud or whether he would. And he finally said he would do it in the best interest of the country. I only point that out because there are a lot of complications in this thing, but there is some history. And I have to tell my students that with the arraignments, the impeachments, all the different things that have happened since Trump has been in office, he still has not been convicted. And that it's one thing to be arraigned and to lift a glass to, oh boy, now he's got indicted again or whatever, but until he is convicted, and my bet would be that he will be convicted in the District of Columbia court, because most of the people I know, and I live in the district, would in fact think that maybe this would be a good idea. Also, I think that what we should keep in mind, though, is that the major issue for me as a historian, and I am also a lawyer, but as a historian, is not so much what happens to Trump, it's what happens to the country. And we have so divided in this country that we remain divided. There are some people out now celebrating that he's been indicted. There are other people moaning and groaning. And I think the Washington Post was right this morning when they said that it will be a question of intent. That is, what did Trump think, and what did he do about whatever he thought? And intent is hard to prove, but I predict that he'll be convicted in the District of Columbia, and we will see what happens elsewhere. And then he can either go to prison and folks can have a drink to that or not. But there is some history that tells us that a lot that happened in this case is not something new and different. The violence is what is new and different. The violence at the Capitol.
And it's fascinating too, because to your point about this arraignment, nothing is stopping him from running for president. Nothing constitutionally
Right,
stops him from
right.
running for president. And so he is continuing to do that and really using these indictments, arraignments, and trials, upcoming trials, as part of that campaign. And I'm kind of curious if we've seen any sort of history of that, a candidate with such legal exposure and such legal, what would appear to be liabilities, while running for the highest office in the land. I mean, I know, of course, we've
Yes,
had
yes,
Nixon and
yes,
Clinton,
Caitlin.
but they were never indicted.
Right, Caitlin. Also, Eugene Debs, the labor leader
Mm.
in the early 19th century, 20th century, ran for office for president and was in prison when he was a candidate on the ballot and got lots of votes. He didn't come any close to winning, but he in fact did that. I think usually you'll find when something happens that we think is historic, there is some example of something or other that happened before, because there really is nothing new under the sun. But Debs was in prison, and if Trump goes to prison, if there's a conviction before the election takes place, and if he's the candidate, then I guess somebody will have to figure out. They didn't have Secret Service in Eugene Debs' years to worry about what they were going to do and all the rest of it and the protection. But there is a precedent for that happening.
Well, on a very historic day, it's great to have a historian here with us to break it all down. Mary Frances Berry, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Okay, good to be with you.